yeah. I think it's small. I could leave it like that. All right. Okay. Just you want to just let actually okay, don't worry. But I think people will come down. Let me just make sure that they know what's in here. Okay, good morning. All right.
It's sort of crazy what's going on right now.
Yeah. Pretty unbelievable.
I woke up a little late, and then I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I
Yeah.
haven't, I spent so much time on on my phone. It's so like it's crazy.
Oh, you're reading all these things.
I
You're
know.
watching. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Maybe we can learn in
Yeah.
honor of that.
This was
Quick picture.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that
What's the line? In the Barkley Nafshi at the end, like
all right, so Itam Chataim Menarz or Shaim Odinan or Shaim Odinam. Yeah.
right? And
Right.
only after that, I just did it in Brachos like a month ago. Only
When Buria and when Buria tells Rabbi Yossi about how to really learn up to the pasuk, it's an interesting one. Yes.
But I don't know where I don't know where I read this from or I heard it. Maybe my brother-in-law told me. But only after that, only after that do you have the Hallelujahs.
Right.
Only after God destroyed life,
Right.
So God willing, that inflection point.
That's right.
There's no Hallelujah.
That's the yeah, I have a lot to be praised, at that time, but and we got to get there. But the way that Brewer learns up that Gemara, for that pasuk, she says it's not the people, it's the sin, right? But yeah. All right, all right. Good morning, Shlomo. Good morning. All right, let's begin, okay? And I see Tommy is here. Okay, Simeon's not there. Okay. All right. So last week and as Jeffrey said a moment ago, we'll dedicate our learning to the schluss of Am Yisrael right now. Everybody needs it. The Chayalim, obviously, but Chatufim, we can't forget them, and everyone. We need everyone to be safe, and that they should be successful in their missions of rooting out evil from this world. Okay. We had talked about last week in Sif Hey that the Gaonim held that the rule of Ein Kiddush Album Kom Suda um, um, applies. Like, what is Suda? Suda can be defined as even something a davar muat. We had said, right? You eat something. Oh, thank you, Yair. Something as a davar muat. Or you drink a little, or you drink wine, right? Shasta kos yain, that where you need to make a bracha acharona on it. So you drink a revius of wine, or you have a kazayas of food, and then you could finish your meal somewhere else. V'gomer seudas b'makom acher. We had said, and we had also added v'dafka achal. I'm just at the top of the page Nun Gimel here now in the Shulchan Aruch. V'dafka achal lechem or shasta yain. We said specifically you have to eat bread or drink wine.
So where are you?
I'm just reviewing a little bit outside. Hey, maybe should we read it quickly? Let's read it. We'll read Sif Hey. I kind of was summarizing it, but let's read it because last week I'm just remembering the only thing I spoke about was the lechem and yayin part. Yeah, let's read that. Okay. Okay. So the Kastvog Onim, how the Ein Kiddush Album comes to that one is that which it says Kiddush only counts in the place where you the Kiddush can only be done in the place where you eat, you have a meal. Filu achal davar muat, that even applies if you eat something small. Oshasa kos yain shechayv alav bracha, or you drink a cup of wine upon which you are obligated to make a bracha acharona. Okay. Then Yatsa Yedei Kiddush Bimkom Suda. Then you fulfill the mandate of Kiddush Bimkom Suda, Vigomer Sudaso Bimolkom Acher, and you complete your meal in another place. That would be perfectly fine. According to that, there's going to be a little bit of machlokas on that part. We're going to see in the even in no food in that circumstance that would get the job done. But that the wine part will be at least disputed. There'll be at least some opinions that don't feel comfortable with that. But yes, according to what we read in the Shulchan Aruch right now in Rish Ayin Gimel Sifei, it would seem that if you have kizayis, like a little, use the words of the Shulchan Aruch, a little bit of food, or you drink enough wine that it requires a bracha, then you have fulfilled Kiddush Bimkom Seuda. And then you can go ahead and have more Suda, finish your Suda in another place. Not a problem at all. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, so I'm at the top of the next page here, or from where we started. V'dafka achal lechem o shasayam. When we're talking about eating, what do you have to eat? You have to eat bread or drink wine.
Do I get this?
Aval achal peiros lo. If you eat fruit, that does not help you fulfill Kiddush b'mkom seuda. We'll get to the comment of the Ramah, which is interesting, and I don't actually know what the minhag is here. It's been a while since there's been a bris on Shabbos in the shul. Though we'll talk about that when we get there. Let's first study the comments of the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll discuss the case of a bris on Shabbos and what do you do with the wine. Okay, let's go back now to the Mishnah Brura. I think we're up to Chaf Aleph. Okay, let's take a look at Chaf Aleph. So he says here, muat. What is muat? Tell me, what does a little bit mean? A little bit is not a very halachic term. Give me more definition. So the Mishnah Berurah here says, "Hainu al kol panim shir kazayis." We're talking about, minimally the size of an olive. The high shechayev alav bracha atarvayhu kai. When it says that, oshasakos yad shechayev alav bracha, actually the chayev alav bracha you have to use a distributive property. Okay, and that goes on the wine and the food. So you have to be chayav a bracha acharona, and the minimum shear for a chayav bracha acharona is kazayis. Okay, so that is and the word atarvayhu means on tar. In the word tray, two tarvayhu, two of them. Okay, all right. So
Rav.
Yes. Good morning, Simeon. How are you?
Hi, good morning. You would not be required to make a birkat hamazon on a kazayit. It isn't a formal seuda, and that's what he's pointing out, I think.
Well, if you had a kazayit of bread, you do have to say birkat hamazon.
You can't say a bracha achrona.
You can't. You must. If you eat a kazayis or more, you must say bracha acharona, and that includes even birkat hamazon. You might say, well, but the Torah says ve'achalta ve'savata uve'rachta, and where's the svia? Where's the
svia? Yeah.
Where's that full satiation that you feel after a meal? So you might say, okay, benching in that case is only derabbanan, but the rabbis established that saying birkat hamazon, even for a kazayis. There's a Gemara that's coming to my mind right now that I can't remember who was it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu or the Malachim are praising the Jewish people maybe it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who praises the Jewish people, but I only told them to bring it to say a bracha after they're full, and they make a bracha even after a kazayis. They're such an amazing people, and so the rabbis instituted that even after you eat a kazayis, you have to make a bracha, including birkat hamazon, even if you're not full. But if you had bread, that's the obligation. Okay. So now let's take a look at Chav Beis. Bracha, hainu shir kashir revius. This is talking about liquids now. We're talking about wine. Drinking a revius of wine. Shechayev alav bracha acharona. That's the minimum size of a liquid that you would drink, where you have to make a bracha acharona.
What does that mean?
It's a quarter of a log, if I'm remembering correctly.
What is kazait? You said the quarter.
Well, for non-liquids, for other foods, the kazayas is the measuring stick. But when you're talking about liquids, you can't measure. I'm sure you can, but you can. It's easier to measure volume of a liquid by using something that is not a solid, right? A kazayas is supposed to be the measuring stick for coming with our solids. A revius is a quantity, yeah, and that's used for liquids. It's the volume for liquids. It's liquids. It's used for liquids.
Isn't that more than Malone Lubmov?
Um, That so when you make kiddush, remember we talked about you have to make kiddush over a revius. Yeah, the minimum size in a kiddush cup, minimum size of a kiddush cup is a revius, and you have to drink at least a rov revius, which is approximately low lugmav, enough to fill one cheek if you push everything to one side of your mouth. So if you imagine the minimum size kiddush cup, that's a revius. That's when you have to say a bracha acharona on liquids. Not just, by the way, wine, but the same goes for water too. What?
That much wine.
Yeah, same for food, by the way, because ice is not a tremendous amount, and yet we have to say bracha. Yeah.
When you say
Rabbi.
they say you have small 3 cookies, you have to say bracha.
Yeah.
So
the question starts to become: I have one cookie, I have one cracker. That's when you're in Suffolk land. That's why Jews are makbid. We have to eat more. A lot of food at kiddush. We don't want to be Suffolk brachos. Yeah, sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
Revius is that 4 ounces or 3 ounces?
Approximately. Then we said, there's different measurements, different poskim have different measurements, but 4 ounces is a good ballparking. Yes. So you think about one of those like small plastic cups. It's like this big. It's not. We're not talking about anything huge here. Yeah. Okay. And here he's following the approach of the poskim who say you have to have for a bracha achrona the minimum amount of for a liquid is that a revius. Okay. The prima godim mitzadeh. The prima godim sides with afilu im nomar be'alma levracha achrona ein sarech revius. That even if we said a bracha acharona, imor ba'alma de levracha acharona ein sarach revius leinin sheyeh nikra b'mkom suda lo chashiv b'pachos mirvius yain. Because even if you hold by some poskim who hold that you have to say a bracha acharona for something less than a revius. Okay, again, the mechaber paskin like the opinion that you need a revius. There are opinions that even a little bit less than revius also requires a bracha acharona, but here he says, the Pri Megadim says, even if you held like that approach, when it comes to the Kiddush B'mkom Seuda, there you have to have a revius. Even according to the opinions that Bracha Achrona is triggered for less than a revius. Okay. So basically, in this matter, no one has any differing opinions. You have to have a revius of Yayin in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush B'mkom Seuda.
By the way, I'm a little
Yes.
surprised that we're talking about the bracha acharona. When I read the Shulchan Aruch, I assumed he was talking about. I'm
You
sort
saying
how the Mishnah Berurah now sort of pivot.
well, the idea of kiddush is that it's a bracha. It's obviously a bracha rishona is involved with the kiddush, but to say that there's a food or a cup that you're chayv alav bracha is very much a bracha achrona term. That you ate or drank something that you're chayv alav bracha. You're obligated upon it for a bracha. There's no obligation for the bracha anymore.
So
you wouldn't be required on the food for a bracha if we're talking about the bracha rishona because you've made it, right? You've done. You make the bracha bar pegafen or what and also in the context of eating something small.
okay, so it is talking about a bracha.
Yeah, correct. By the way, the Be'er Heitev, I see also your comment. Perush Shashas Revius Shechayv Bracha Achrona. Yeah, everyone, everyone reads it that way. Yeah. That's very much language of like bracha achrona. Chayv alav bracha, and I owe a bracha. You know,
Right.
it's true you didn't make a bracha before you eat, but once you're in the midst of eating, now you owe it more. The bracha rishona you make right before you eat it, but bracha achrona you can linger sometimes before you actually make it. Okay. Chaf. Oh, turn the page here. Chaf Gimel. So remember, he says you can eat one place and then you can go finish your meal in the other place. Gomer Sudas and Makom Acher. So Chaf Gimel, he writes Ayin Leil V'Sibin Kuf Ayin Ches Sif Beis Bahaga Dilechatchil Yaakov B'Mkomo B'Li Birkas Hamazon. Ideally, you're really not supposed to leave the place where you started a meal without offering up your bracha achrona. So if you all are benching now because you had bread, you should bench. You want to continue your meal somewhere else? No problem. You'll make a new bracha rishona, not on the. You don't have to make a kiddush, but you'll make a new whatever it is the bracha you have to make, amotzi, mizonos, whatever. But it's ach bidi avad. If let's say you leave, you forget whatever hishakar. When you leave that spot, you uproot yourself. Ein tzarich levarach berachas hamazon mikodem ela achar gemar haseuda. But now you're already in another place. You left. So like, what does the birkas hamazon help you? You're gonna have to do it anyways in a few minutes now after this next batch of food that you're gonna eat. So then you'll make the birkas hamazon there. But so what the Mishnah Berurah just wants to clarify here is that yes, fine, you can go finish your meal somewhere else, but you really should say a bracha acharona when you're done in this particular location.
That means you have to say again, you have to wash hands. It's the bracha again of the bread.
Well, that's interesting because you need to have another bread meal. Maybe this was a small bread meal, but technically you might not need to. It might be nice to. I'm not saying no.
But if you say Birkat Hamazon, don't you have to start all over?
You have to start all over again. So you have to make a bracha rishona's, bracha rishona on either hamotzi that covers everything, or yeah. Correct. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Chaf Daled b'makom acher in another place. The sham ein tzarich levarach od al hakos kodem sheyisod dahak kvar yatzei yedei kiddush. When you get to that other location, you're good to go. You don't need to make kiddush again. That's what I've told. I think I've said here. If you're yotzei with kiddush here in shul on Shabbos morning, and you eat the minimum amount and the minimum and the correct type of food for you to fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush b'mkom seuda, and everyone in your household, everyone has done that. You don't need to start with kiddush when you get home. You could just go ahead and wash your hands and begin with hamotzi. That is on the table. If you do choose to make a bar piyagafen, there's no problem with this, and it's a nice thing in some ways that you have to, you're enhancing this meal, but you don't need to. You fulfilled the mitzvah of kiddush b'mkom seuda.
That would assume that everybody at the table has already heard kiddush.
Absolutely. We have to go around and say, did you do the mitzvah? You fulfilled the mitzvah. Everyone has to check off a yes. I ate a minimum of a kazayas at the kiddush. I heard the kiddush when the rabbi made it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely. You have to make sure everybody has fulfilled the mitzvah in order to just go ahead and start with washing and hamotzi.
But Rabbi,
Yes.
If that's the case, if I heard kiddush in shul and I come home and have guests, can I be motziot them?
Yes.
We find a kiddush again.
You absolutely can. Yes. So it's a good review from last week that we saw in Sif Daled that even by the Shabbos day kiddush, you could be motzi others, even if you are not fulfilling your obligation in that moment. Either you're going to eat somewhere else, or you're going to, or you've already made kiddush, so you're good to go. When it comes to this, you can be motzi others. There is an interesting discussion though, because if you've done your own mitzvah, remember the Shulchan Aruch had said you only should do that then for who? Those who are einam yodim. So it's interesting. The people around the table haven't heard kiddush, haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of kiddush, and you have. Should you do a kiddush for them? I mean, the answer is if you're going to drink some of the wine, the answer is yes, you can, because you are being neheneh from the borei piyagafen. If you have no plans to continue drinking wine, you just want your guests to fulfill the bracha for borei piyagafen, then you should actually probably ask one of your guests to make the kiddush. But usually, I've never been to, somewhere where the balabas made the kiddush and then didn't drink from it. So Yes, you can make kiddush as long as you drink from it. Then you're totally fine. It's a bar per government. Friday night is a different circumstance, by the way. If you were, if you ever yotze the bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos through something else, um, and it's an interesting question. Should you then go home and make kiddush on your own, or let somebody else? Because the Mekadesh HaShabbos bracha, I don't know. You can force you to most of the others. By the way, the Aruch HaShulchan said, of course, you don't even have to think about this. It's not about. He didn't. I think if I remember correctly, he said it's Behusha and Yodim. Okay, whatever. If you, at the end of the day, you can most the others. You can most the others. So, anyways, again, Friday night is pretty rare circumstance. Though again, Richie said that sometimes there are some kiddushes around town on, you know. So then you maybe lend yourself to that question. If you were Yotzei Kiddush from Kom Suda with that Kiddush of Friday night, where it's not just a Bar Pergafa, you're making a whole nother bracha. According to the simple reading of the Shulchan Aruch, maybe the person who hasn't heard Kiddush yet, who knows how to make Kiddush on their own, should make Kiddush. But I'm going to stop short of actually saying that because there are those who say that you could absolutely make the Kiddush for everyone. Okay.
Rav?
Yes, Simi, go ahead.
Rabbi Rubenstein, Olav Shalom, once gave a shiur in the recitation of a kiddush, and he was talking even Friday night. And what he said is that the obligation, if you were in shul and you heard kiddush and you come home and there's somebody there that has not heard kiddush yet, they have a stronger obligation and should preempt even the balabayis, and they can recite the kiddush, even if the only other person there is his wife.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. It's look. There's what to say about about how do you fulfill the mitzvah in the davening of kiddush on a doraisa level, and then what does that mean for those who were at home who didn't engage in tefillah? There's what to say about it, but the end of the day, because of the rules of kiddush b'mokom, the rules of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazah. Even if you already fulfilled your obligation, you can make a bracha for somebody else. Look, they could do it either way in that situation. I hear what Rabbi Rubenstein is a fellow bracha, is saying, and it's a fair point.
I'll tell you how he paskined. So I had asked the question at the time. That means that under those circumstances, the next person in line, even the wife, has the primary obligation. And he said, yes. And I said to him, why don't we do it? And his response was, I ain't going to be the first.
There you go. That's the tough job of poskim. Yeah, we learned that women are equally obligated in kiddush. That's right, correct. Because why? Because shamor and zachor, but dibur echad nem.
Right.
Just like women are obligated in the shamor, they're equally obligated in the zachor, and there is no differentiation on that one. Absolutely, there's zero differentiation in the level of obligation. All right, so now let's take a look at the next comment here of the Mishnah Berurah. Shasa Yain Chafei. Okay, hi Richie. Reish Ayin Gimel Sif Katan Chafei in the Mishnah Berurah. So here the Shulchan Aruch had said, or Kiddush Makom Suda can be fulfilled by just drinking wine. Okay, so let's see what he means by this. Or let's see what he adds into this. He says V'chol shekain im achal mine targime mechamishes minim diyot. Bless you. Wine, he goes right to the kol shekain. If wine can count to fulfill kiddush b'mkom suda, all the more so if you eat some sort of mine targima. These are cooked dishes that are from the 5 grains. Mizonos, you're going to say mizonos on these things. That you should be yotzei kiddush b'mkom suda because they're more chashiv for a suda Shabbos than yayin. Yeah, what is the wine doesn't fill you up? The food fills you up. Grainy types of foods will fill you up. Aval sheichar ushar mashkim. If you have alcoholic beverages or other beverages, afilu im hayu chamar medina, even if it's a beverage of the country, which we thought that you can make kiddush on it, maybe not ideally, but you can make kiddush on it. Ein yotzevam bimkom suda. You will not. That doesn't get you to the check mark for kiddush bimkom suda. So if you're just having whiskey or any other kind of schnapps, that's not going to help you. Why? That doesn't gladden the heart quite like wine does. So you see here the extension of the rule of kiddush b'makom suda to include mizonos, which of course is an extremely helpful fact for anyone who engages in kiddush at any shul anywhere in the world, because that's really the way you're going to fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush b'makom suda, unless they're handing out wine and the grape juice to all participants in the kiddushes, which seems like a very expensive proposition if you think about how much grape juice would need to be consumed. Okay, so that's that is number one. By the way, and I have a little comment here on the side, number 3. Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it talks about grape juice. This grape juice is a whole discussion. Always gladdens, because if gladdens the heart is the standard. Does grape juice gladden the heart? There's always the machlokas when it comes to wine, and grape juice in the wine category. And as you'll not be surprised, there are poskim on this side of the argument and on that side of the argument about what grape juice means. And I will just quote Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach at the end, because he's one of the great poskim of the 20th century. And then there are many other great ones that are listed here. But he says, "Shenechshav kiddush b'mukom suda kaven shemisad soid." That drinking grape juice at the end of the day seems to count for kiddush b'makom suda as a minimum. Again, people on the other side, Vosner thought that's not it's not like shtiyas yayin. So okay, there are different opinions here, but I think if that's what you relied upon minimally, you have almi lismoch. Okay, just know. Okay. All right.
By the way, the word
Yeah. It like satiates the heart. Right.
Like satisfies hunger,
Right.
not even like you said.
Right. Does it satiate the heart? So you say that means like just for satiation. Stam say, that there's that's why sometimes like it gives you yishuv hadas. That's why I like this. I think people like it gives you like wine makes you feel good.
Or takes away hunger.
Right. All right. So does grape juice do that? That's the question.
Some reason they think wine takes away hunger.
Right.
Their wine is not quite our wine.
Right. Yeah, look, but I go back to also in this regards to this question about grape juice. The Gemara says you could take grapes, freshly squeezed grapes, crush them, get the juice out of it, and then make kiddush. Now you can't do that on Shabbos. That's the funny part, but you can't do that on Shabbos. But if you squeeze it right before Shabbos and then you make kiddush with such wine, even though there's 0% alcohol there, it's absolutely perfectly usable for kiddush. What was that? Like Paro's dream, right? Where they squeeze the grapes and then, Yosef sees, not Yosef, sorry, the butler sees himself, the Sarah Mashkiv sees himself serving that.
Grapes right into the cup.
Correct. Directly into the cup. Yeah. That's what never thought of that. That's a good proof for what should count as wine is from the dream of Yosef. Of the Sarah Mashkiv and Yosef's interpretation that he describes it as wine. He was crushing an eshkol anavim, and then he was giving it to Paro, and Paro accepted it. Okay, if Paro didn't like it, if it wouldn't be wine, Paro wouldn't accept such a. It's a good. It's a good proof.
But Rav,
Yeah.
Rav, that cannot possibly be misameach es halev.
100%. But Richie pointed out very, very astutely. It doesn't say misameach es halev here. It says soed es halev. Which is the soed, the seuda. What is that? It's like to obviously seuda means a meal, but in this case, like soed is what's the other word here? To satisfy. All right. So
As
right.
opposed to gladden.
Yeah. So he's being medayek in the language here. Yeah. All right. It's good. It's a good point. That's why you gotta be good.
There's a line in Tehillim, Yain Samach L'Vavenu.
Yeah. Right.
And he used that a lot.
Yain yisamach lilav enosh. Right. Right.
There's wine to a lot of simcha.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
I mean, even Avelos.
right. By the way, even in my extra comment here, when it says "Umitza navim ha'im dino ki yain v'nechshav ki seuda o dino ki shar mashkim," like is it satisfying? Like is it filling? Is it? And that's where that So they use the word seuda there. They don't talk about joy or happiness. All right. Let's take a look at the next comment, or continuing in the here, middle of the comment. The ayin, the chidushay hagaon Rabbi Akiva Eger, u'v'tosefes Shabbos, shochichu delakama rishonim eno yotze yedei kiddush b'mkom suda al yedei kos yain. So Rabbi Akiva Eger paskins, or at least cites. I don't know if he paskins. I should be careful here. He and the Tosefes Shabbos both cite that some rishonim hold that you're not yotze kiddush b'mkom suda if you just use a kos yain. That's not enough. If you just make kiddush and you drink, you're like, oh, well, now I did a kiddush from Kol Suda. That doesn't get you across the finish line. Why? If you're the rabbi, or when the rabbi's away, you're me, or if you're like a bar mitzvah parent, bar mitzvah parents, sometimes when Morris invites them to make the kiddush here, you have to be careful not to only drink the wine and say, or the grape juice and say, I'm good to go. I drank, and so if I don't need anything more, okay, I had kiddush from Kol Suda. Because if you're going to make kiddush, it has to be the kiddush from Kom Suda. In which case, I have to know in my head that I need to go over there and take something to eat. Okay? Otherwise, you're relying only on the wine having gotten you across the finish line for kiddush from Kom Suda. And he says here, Mishnah Berurah at the end, you really shouldn't rely on only the wine, unless there is an extenuating circumstance that prevents you from having more than that. But otherwise, you should go have something little, something more, in order to ensure you fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush from Kom Suda. Yeah, Shlomo, go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it was like a thought that you can drink wine, fully drink wine, and say b'chachuna.
How can they argue with him?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Which opinion should be?
The note is here. So look, the Shulchan Aruch always has to, in certain situations, the Shulchan Aruch takes sides. Often takes sides. He has a general rule that he paskins by the Rov Habayis. Who makes up the house? There are three Rishonim who make up the house. The Rosh, right? The Rambam, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. Now, of course, that means, by the way, the deck is stacked against the Ashkenaz. The Rif and the Rambam will always paskin together, and that's so the Sfaradim are well represented.
Yeah.
The Rosh.
They have met my wife.
the Rosh, okay, is an Ashkenazi, so he often will paskin 2 against 1. Certain machlokas, not always, by the way. There are other, he'll factor in Tosfos sometimes, but that's his general rule. So what was that? That's true. He ended up because he ran away out of fear. He ended up, and that's why the Tur, his son, lived a good chunk of his life. More of his life was lived in Sfarad than it was lived in Ashkenaz, in Germany, in that area. So that's why he's also very well aware of all the shitos that are around.
Spectrum of all kinds of.
Yeah, so the Mechaber definitely takes into account more opinions as well sometimes, 100%. But at the end of the day, he's often making choices of one opinion over the other. So all that by Rabbi Akiva Eger, for example, points out here, and that's why I don't have the Sefer Rabbi Akiva Eger, so otherwise I'd love to look it up. But all he's pointing out is that there are Rishonim, right? Because the Shulchan Aruch takes the opinion of the Rishonim and chooses the majority usually. But Rabbi Akiva Eger is pointing out there are other Rishonim who say wine's not enough, and so he's just pointing out and often when there's a low threshold to fulfill multiple opinions, we usually go for that. So what are we asking somebody to do here? Don't just drink the cup of wine. Go and have a cracker. Go and have a piece of cake. Go and have a little something. It's not like we're asking you to do a heavy lift here. And I think that's where this is coming from. That's why Ein Lahakel Bazet. Don't be lenient on this one. Right? Because there are some Rishonim who hold that wine by itself is not considered enough to make it Malkum Seudah.
Yes.
So only b'mkom adchak, when it's a difficult circumstance, then then you can rely on it. You could think about different scenarios when that's the case, right? I mentioned things like nursing homes and things. When you're not in the easiest situation, okay, that's in different in their extenuating circumstances will allow it, but generally we shouldn't rely on it. That's his psak halacha here at the end. By the way, if the Aruch HaShulchan weighs in on this question about the wine being enough or not. But I'll tell you, it's interesting what the Aruch HaShulchan wrote. He quotes the Sifei, and then he says, so you don't have this in front of you, I'm sorry, just listen, it's 5 lines. You need a kezayis lechem, the halechem hu mine mizonos. And he interprets, so he doesn't even give the whole, if wine is then definitely mizonos. He doesn't know, lechem means mizonos too. And he says, "V'cheinu ha'minhag ha'pashut etzleinu b'kiddush shachar shel Shabbos." Don't worry, the kiddush is the minhag of having mizonos at kiddush, morning already goes back some time. He says that's our minhag. It's a widespread minhag to have kiddush with mizonos in the morning. V'yoser tov le'apat. Okay, this will make Richie very happy. I know it's ready. V'yoser tov lechol miyatzu Shabbos b'shleimus. D'zeh ikar kiddush b'mkom seuda. Okay, you heard that one, Richie? Right? That it's better to eat a full meal. That's really, you should make kiddush and have your full meal because that's the essential way of fulfilling kiddush b'mkom seuda. Right? He's saying that. I think he's saying that it's better to have your full Seudah Shabbos. Again, not saying that you can't fulfill mitzvah of kiddush b'mkom seuda, but he says yoser tov. I'm just giving you that language. Okay. Now, peiros, low. Let's go back to the chavav now. But if I have peiros, that doesn't count. Why doesn't that count? Okay, the chameshes meaning nikra mazon. Why do 5 grains count? Why do the mizonos foods count? Because they're called mazon. Mazon is foods that are fulfilling, right? And v'yayin soed halev, and wine satiates the heart. Right. What is this one? Oh, tamarim. Interesting. Which is also the reason why, because actually, let's come back to that because it's not inconsequential because you're making a bracha me'ein shalosh. Bracha me'ein shalosh is a condensed version of the benching for hameshas haminim and for certain fruits that grow in Eretz Yisrael. Because again, the wine you make a bracha me'ein shalosh, the hameshas haminim you make a bracha me'ein shalosh, but then there are 5 fruits that you make the bracha me'ein shalosh on, right? So there's the ones that are through which Eretz Yisrael is praised, right? There.
But all of them are the Chamesh Aminim.
No. Chamesh Aminim are the 5 grains, wheat, barley, rye, oats, spelt, oats. The 5 fruits are a subset of the 7 species, wheat and barley being 2 of them. And then there are 5 fruits, olives, dates, pomegranates, figs, and olives. Did I say olives already? I said olives. Dates, figs, grapes. Sorry, grapes.
So these are all plates, and then.
But those are where you say
on the
the bracha me'ein shalosh on those fruits. So the question we'll come back in a second. Does that count for kiddush b'mkom seudah because they are more chashuv a bracha achrona? The simple answer is no, but it's at least an interesting question. Okay, aval shar dvar back in the Mishnah Berurah. Afilu ochel mehem harbe eno chashuv seudah klal. You could have chicken and ribs and steak and turkey. You can eat all this at kiddush, and you could at the end you could be plotzing and you have to loosen the belt. And oh my gosh, I had doesn't count for kiddush b'mkom seudah because at the end of the day, that's not a type of food that is the satiating type of food. Of course, if you eat enough of anything, you'll fill yourself up. But that is not considered mazon. Okay? So he says here, Ein lo kosher suda klal, that's not considered a suda klal at all. Like nothing. Garnished. Okay? Va'alkein, ma shenohagim leilech lebeis chasan o mila. Now, this is interesting because this is not exactly our situation, but I love seeing this because it tells you what used to be the practice and what he didn't like. He say, I see this and I don't like it. He says, in the practice to go to a base chassan, what's a base chassan? It's Shabbos. That's not a base chassan. It's, I don't think he's talking about Ofruf here. I think he's talking about like a Sheva Brachos, right? It's a base chasanim, right? You're going to a Sheva Brachos on Shabbos or a Mila. So you're going to a Sudas Bris Mila. By the way, they didn't do this at all in the shul. As soon as Miss Milo was in the house, and then you didn't pay for catering for 300. Ve'ein sham kisanin, right? Achar kiddush rak mine megodim. They don't have any kisanin there. They don't have any mizonos type of stuff, right? Pasab kisanin is like mizonos. But what do they have? They don't have like cake. They have megodim. They have candy, right? They have candy there. Right? It's all sorts of sweets. You're trying to be yotze with kiddush from Kom Suda at the Beis Chasanim or at the bris milah. You show up and you're like, I'm a mesamech, and you take a little bit, and you're just having licorice. Sorry, that's not a Suda. You can't actually eat now because you have to have kiddush, b'mkom Suda, and you say, oh, you heard the kiddush that somebody made, and then you had a licorice. You can't do that. That doesn't count. So he didn't like this minhag. Apparently, that they used to that people were putting out candy, and then some people were only being yotze on the candy. Okay. Velo sagi b'mashke hamikadesh shows the kolakos. Oh, the guy made kiddush for the they're having a bris milah kiddush over there, and the guy made kiddush. We'll talk about the milah kiddush in a moment. After machzik revius, he had a revius and he drank the whole thing. That doesn't help me. Great. That helps him fulfill his list of kiddush rak as long as you allow wine. That doesn't help me. I need to again eat some mizonos. So I had the candy. That doesn't help me anything. Right? And the Shiltei Giborim writes that even with Peros, that's enough. The Chol Sudas Shabbos Nech Sheves Keva. Because any Suda Shabbos is considered, permanent. I sat down, and that was my meal. My meal was a meal of fruit. I had a fruit salad, and it was a gesund fruit salad, right? And I really I made it into a whole thing. He says the Shulchan Aruch says that's enough. He says that's a das yachid. Really, you need to have mizonos. You need to have mizonos. Maybe wine could count too, but you have to have mizonos. But if you're not feeling well though, and it's the morning, and you don't have something else available to you. You don't have the mizonos easily available. You're not feeling good, and you're like, I want to make kiddush. Make kiddush, and you're like, all you can find is fruit or something like in that category, which is not chamesh. To me, he says, okay. You're not feeling well, right? That's why he says here, your heart is weak. You're feeling weak. Okay, know what that is very recently. So then he says you can rely on it in the morning. In the morning though. But in the nighttime, which is much more sort of a serious situation, right? Of kiddush b'makom suda is the mitzvah d'oraisa of kiddush in the evening. Then you shouldn't rely on that. You should fulfill your mitzvah first before engaging in the candy. It's fine to eat it, but you have to have something else too. All right, Chav Zayin, Kashir. Okay, the right amount. Oh, sorry, we didn't do this part. So let's go back on the top. Now we're going to talk about the bris milah. Okay, so Richie, I know you say you have to go to Shachas right now. Do you remember what the minhag is here? Anybody here? When we do bris milah here on Shabbos at the end of davening in the shul, does that borei priagafen, does that function as the kiddush? Do you have a recollection? Because you have to make a borei priagafen as part of the bris milah ceremony. But does the rabbi say, okay, have in mind when we make the bar priya gafen, everyone, this is the bar priya gafen for Kiddush this morning?
Yeah.
No recollection.
I don't remember that many.
On Shabbos, right. It's pretty rare.
Anytime they did.
Yeah, there's been. I'll tell you my first Shabbos of all the Shabbos I was here. My first Shabbos that I was here in the community. I moved in. He was a little tiny baby, and there was a big crowd that morning. Richie Langer. Yes, he has a big car collection. Lily and Richie had a bris of a grandson that morning. I'm trying to remember which child had the. I don't know. I'm slipping right now, but they had there was because I remember that Rabbi Martyr was there, so I think he's related to them, and Susie and Rabbi Martyr had walked over from White Plains for the bris because I remember I'd met him before. And I came there, and I remember it was like my first Shabbos. What a huge crowd! Like it was like, and people, and there was a bris that Shabbos morning. I have no recollection what happened with Kiddush that morning. Like was that the Bar Priya Gafen? Did they make a separate Bar Priya Gafen? Because you have to understand, to make the Bar Priya Gafen at that point, usually when you either at a regular bris, they don't drink it. You don't drink a Revius. You don't have to. There's no obligation to, because the idea of wine being used at a bris milah is a later minhag to enhance the mitzvah of bris milah. It's not like you have to drink a Revius like the way you do it, or a Rove Revius like you do, on Shabbos, or when you're fulfilling the mitzvah through wine. And by the way, even when you do it for Friday nights, you have to drink a Rove Revius. That's not a Revius. That doesn't require you a bracha chrono yet. So, anyway, so let's take over. That's what the next case we're going to talk about here in the Ramah.
But Rav.
Yeah.
What was your final question on that Shabbos? They made Kiddush.
Did the Borei Priya Gafen in the ceremony
in the shul, in the sanctuary?
Yeah, they made Kiddush. Yeah, sorry.
And the meal took place in the social hall.
Correct. That was the Kiddush, being right
and
before.
And that's permissible. We learned that 2 weeks ago or so under the concept of Gag Echad, and you had it in mind lechatchila.
Right. So it should work as long as all the right kavanos are in place. But take a look what the Rama writes here. Ulefizeh, he writes, Haya, based on everything we've just said, Ulefizeh, Haya muter lemohel ulesandak. Just to clarify, anyone who's not clear, obviously the mohel is the one who does the circumcision. The sandak is the one upon whom the baby is resting while the milah takes place. Okay, and it's a very big kavod to be the sandak. Very big kavod to be the sandak, and really the job of sandak is the moment the milah happens. Now there are extra kibbudim that have been created to create shalom al Yisrael. There's the sitting sandak and the standing sandak. And then there's the kisa shalaga. That's the thing. Then there's me'al hakisa. You lift him up from the kisa. Sorry, I shouldn't say the it's made up. There's no the standing sandak is also made up. It's nice. It's very they hold the baby during the kriyas Hashem. It's a beautiful thing. The only thing that was ever sort of historically the things that sort of the real positions are sandak. That's it. And the mohel. Okay, but usually people don't just take on mohel willy-nilly, that's you're training for that. Okay, so it's permissible for the mohel or the sandak lishtos mikos shel mila b'Shabbos b'shachris im shosim kashir. They can drink from the kos shel mila in the morning if they drink enough. Because I told you usually you take a sip, you don't drink a whole thing. But if you're not going to drink enough of it, then it's not kiddush malchum suda. Because in order for Kiddush Malchum to count using wine, you have to drink a revius. So, but that's not what people do. That's just not what people do when they do a revius. I'm telling you, as the person who's often drunk the wine, because I've often done the Bar Pegaf and Bracha, and the Bracha of Asher Kidash Yidimi Beten. I do not drink more than a little bit, because otherwise, any day there's a bris milah, I don't tolerate alcohol very well. I cannot get in the car, so I just drink a little bit. And that's all you need. This is a bar pregaf, and a teima ba'alma is enough, really. A little taste.
For the baby.
Right.
What does the Rama say? Aval nahagu litein latinok. The minhag is not that the mohel, not that the sandik, not that the rabbi who makes the bracha tastes on Shabbos, but rather they give it to the tinok. We see often that people, by the way, that many of them all do this. I noticed that the Katzenstein do this. They take the pacifier, dip it into the. It's a veteran move, by the way. Sometimes that's why the Katzensteins are like, like the veteran move because. Sometimes they take a little cloth or whatever. The baby, they give them. They want the pacifier. Anyway, so it's a veteran move. So he takes the pacifier, puts it in the wine, dips it, and then gives it. By the way, why is that okay? Because all you need is a te'ima ba'alma. As long as the baby has a drop, then the bar gafen is good. It's good to go, and I can make it for the baby in this circumstance. Because it's a sort of a birchas hamitzvah. It's a little tricky though because it's not true birchas hamitzvah, but we treat it like a birchas hamitzvah. That's the minhag is to give it to the baby on Shabbos, and that's to avoid the problem of the person who makes the bracha doesn't drink enough. If you drink enough, then it's okay. Now the other way that you could say this would be okay is and you have to drink, but you would have to drink enough. You have to drink a rove kos, a rove revius, of kiddush wine, if you want this to count as kiddush, and then continue the meal, in the room, which is probably what usually happens. So there's a sudas bris milah waiting for you. Maybe it's in the social, but you have to then drink at least a rove revius because that's kiddush now, and you would also have to draw everyone's attention to, hey, everyone who's in the room, listen up. This is kiddush, or at least for the person who's drinking the wine, they have to think that this is kiddush, okay? But the minhag was always to give it to the baby. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah here says, Kashir, Chav Zayin, Dahainu Sheyishta Shir Revius. You have to drink a revius. Where's my extra comment here? Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, hold on. V'yesh omim she'eno yotzei yedei kiddush b'mkom seuda, afilu yishta shir revius, rak tzarich lishtos revius yayin milvad hakos shel kiddush. And there are those that say you're not yotzei the kiddush in the place of your suda, even if you drank a revius of the bris milah wine. You have to know rak tzarich lishtos revius yayin milvad hakos shel kiddush. You have to drink another revius aside from the kiddush wine. And I believe that's a general. That's a rule in this circumstance. Why? Anyone want to take a venture a guess here? Here it's, I think, because.
Does the kid gets?
I believe here he's trying to say because of maybe the principle of the ein mitzvah osim mitzvos chavilos, because that cup of wine. Let's see, there's a shirat here. Who does salavush? The harbor barabu ha'achronim al nivshita. So we come up with kiddush zach. Yesh this one. Aval kiddush leila en hakel zev. I yishte od kos echa b'leila milvad zeh. Oh no, he's saying a general rule here. There are some who hold that kiddush, in general, that if you're going to rely on the position that wine counts, then you have to drink as a separate, not the kosher kiddush wine, a separate wine of a separate cup for over revius. Yeah, it's like you have drinking more. If you're going to make the wine as your seuda, the kosher kiddush can't count as that. You have to have a separate kos, more wine. Yeah. Now, interesting here, there's a principle, and I think that does he mention it here?
Wine is a wine. If you have enough to make the fakach one on a wine, you can drink it from the same cup you make kiddush from. Why do you have to go to another cup? I don't understand.
Because it's more chashuv.
I think you just need more wine placed.
Yeah, but if you have it from the wine you make,
I don't know what.
Yeah, no, I think the idea is that it's more chashuv. I'm giving it chashivas that not just the kiddush wine. I have more wine. That's like my seuda. The kiddush wine is kiddush.
Okay.
That's I think the theory behind it. All right, I think we're gonna stop here. We'll talk about next week. I want to talk about the ein osim mitzvos chavilos piece, because how can you do two mitzvos here at the bris milah and the kiddush together in the same cup of wine? We're not supposed to bundle mitzvos, but here we seem to be allowing it, unless you're giving it to the kid, in which case you're not. But we're gonna see that I think it's the Aruch HaShulchan.
When you
He's gonna give
But when you make the bleach, you don't say bracha for
yeah, he talks about here.
like in Shabbat. You don't even mention Shabbat at all. Would you say?
But the bracha in the morning on Shabbat for Kiddush doesn't require Kiddush. By the way, if you want to add, by the way, if
you have to say something.
so you don't have to actually. Technically, just a Bar Pegafim.
That's it.
That's it. Other stuff was added later, just to make it more chashuv. Just to give it some Shabbos content. Yeah, but that's like even if you did want to do it. By the way, what you could do is say Vishamru, then Bar Pegafim, then Asher the Bracha Vasher Kidashi Divi. You can do that. There would be no problem in adding it in if you wanted to. So we're going to see that next week that Aruch HaShulchan says it's fine to do it all in one big fell swoop, and it's no problem. You know, he said, I don't understand why it's the difference between 1 cup, 2 cups. He doesn't hold of this. And we're gonna see that next week. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
All right, and then we'll finish the simon next week. It's very little bit left actually. So yeah. Thank you. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Good news.
So, thank you very much.